Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of High Vibrational Energy. I can't even believe that I'm saying this out loud. I have wanted to do this podcast now for probably the past 3 years, but I've always been held back by fear. So I thought, what better way to start my podcast than to just be completely honest with you and tell you exactly how I've got through fear in order to get to this point. So today's episode is called How to Get Rid of Fear. This podcast is going to be all about manifestation, working through your limiting beliefs, and how to access your potential. Because we should all be thriving and living the life of our dreams, yet I feel like a lot of us are living below our potential and we're unaware and we're just letting life pass us by. So my fear of starting this podcast was down to fear of judgment, fear of being laughed at, fear of not being good enough, fear of failure. And even though I felt so strongly called to start this podcast, I kept finding reasons not to do it. I told myself that I'd start when I feel more ready, when I know more, when I feel more confident. But the truth is, I was never going to feel ready if I kept letting fear run the show. So instead of ignoring that fear, I decided to go away and do the inner work that I needed to do to get here today. I started to have a proper look at what was actually holding me back, my limiting beliefs, my self-image, the story that I keep telling myself and that I have been doing for years. And now I'm here to tell the tale. Don't get me wrong, this still feels very scary. This is really out of my comfort zone. But I learned something really important along the way. Fear doesn't disappear before you take action. It disappears when you take action. You can literally dissolve fear yourself by just pushing yourself off the cliff and landing in the thing that you really want to do. So I'm going to tell you how I got fear in a headlock so I can show up not just for myself but for you too, because I know that when I was on this journey, podcast really helped me. I don't really read much anymore. I used to when I was younger, but podcasts are good for me because I can listen to them whilst multitasking. But podcast really, really helped me. So if I can help just one person get through the limiting beliefs, then that's a win for me. So let's get into it. Right, first of all, what actually is fear? Fear is just a natural response to something that we perceive as a threat. So it could be physical, it could be emotional, or it could just be in our head, which most of the time it is. Fear exists to protect us. It activates our body's fight or flight response, where we release adrenaline, and our senses sharpen, helping us react quicker. So for example, if you're crossing the road and a car comes speeding towards you, you're going to jump out the way, aren't you? Because your fear response kicks in. So fear is there to protect us. That's fear doing its job. But here's where it gets interesting. In day-to-day life, fear works in a different way. Most of the fear that we experience day to day isn't physical danger, it's mental fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being seen, fear of not being enough. And when that fear becomes constant, it turns into anxiety. Your brain's job is to keep you safe, but sometimes safe can also keep you small and in a box, even if that box is uncomfortable. Fear will also convince you that staying stuck and small is better than growing, but it's not. Right, I'm going to tell you now about a study that really changed my perspective. 85% of what we worry about never actually happens. What a waste of my precious energy and time. And of the 15% that does happen, people realised that they either learned something valuable from it or they handled it better than expected. So most of our fear isn't even real. It's imagined. Fear doesn't actually exist in the present moment. It's in the future. It's in the what ifs. What if I fail? What if people laugh at me? What if I embarrass myself? What if people find it cringy? And here's the crazy part. Your mind can't actually tell the difference between what is imagined and what is actually real. So if you're constantly visualising worst case scenarios, your body will react as if it's actually real. And when you focus on what you don't want, you're way more likely to attract it because energy flows where attention goes. You will never catch me thinking about the worst case scenario. I have trained my brain now to only think about the best case scenario. I could be in the worst situation ever, and you best believe I'm still thinking about the best case scenario. And guess what? It usually happens. I don't usually find myself unstuck. And people that like to focus on the negative, I can't really be around because you're going to attract it. You are going to attract it. And also, it's a much happier place to focus on the positive. If you're someone that's constantly stuck in the negative, and by the way, most people don't even realise that they're stuck in a negative mindset. It's just the programming running on and on and on. It's not until you point it out that they realise, actually, yeah, everything I have just said has been negative. Yeah, it has. So change it. I wasn't always this way though. Actually, let me share a little bit about me. So I used to be the most anxious, self-hating person ever. I had such a poor self-image that I genuinely couldn't tell you one thing that I liked about myself. Not one thing. And because I felt like this, my outer world was also reflecting this. I didn't feel worthy of good things. I didn't put myself out there. I didn't go after what I wanted because I didn't feel worthy of having it. I had this constant negative voice in my head all the time. Don't post that. Everyone will laugh at you. Why would they choose you? You're not good enough. That's embarrassing. You're stupid. You're ugly. Your body's not good enough. All these negative things all the time. I was my own worst bully. I really was. I was bullying myself. And the scariest part about all of that was that I thought that voice was me. I thought that's just how I am and I can't change. Now let me tell you step number 1 of how to get rid of fear. Because once I learnt this, my whole life changed. This is the game changer. Everything for me changed when I started to become self-aware. So our brains are like supercomputers. They run off of programming. And the programming was formed in our childhood from our upbringing, our parents, teachers, environment, experiences. All of that shapes our beliefs, fears, and self-image. For example, if you grew up with parents that used to say things like, we can't afford that, do you think money grows on trees? Subconsciously, the child learns that money is a stress, they have a scarcity mindset, there's a lack of abundance in the world. And as a result of this, in your adult life, you may be running off a programming where you have a fear of charging your worth, you work in a job that undervalues you, you put up with disrespect, you're self-sabotaging when money starts to flow in. And by the way, most parents don't do this intentionally. This is just something that they haven't healed, that they've subconsciously passed on to you. But the moment that you become aware of this programming, that's when you take your power back. Awareness breaks the cycle. When you're unaware, you're a victim of your programming. You're on autopilot. But when you become self-aware, and you start noticing your thoughts, rather than just reveling in them, you start noticing your thoughts. Why do I think like that? Is that true? As soon as you start to realise, I am not my thoughts, I'm the observer of my thoughts, and I can change my thoughts, that is when magic starts happening. So if you want to start reprogramming that fearful voice in your head, here's a little practice that you can do. Next time you feel fear come up, just ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Is this actually me? Is this my fear? Is this actually true? And would I speak to someone that I love this way? Because the way that I used to speak to myself, I would never in a million years have spoken to a friend like that. But why was it okay to speak to myself like that? Why is it okay to hate yourself and it's so demonized to love yourself? The better you speak to yourself, the more confidence you'll have. The more confidence you have, the less control fear has over you. Most fears fall apart under questioning. Fear just means that you're growing. If something scares you but also excites you, that's not fear, that's expansion. So if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. When you feel the fear, don't stop. Lean into the fear. Fear means that you're standing on the edge of something new. In my experience, every time I've felt fear and I've just lent into it and done it anyway, something great has always come out the other side. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to take them first few steps and you will notice your confidence growing along the way. I think I'm going to wrap it up here, but thank you so much for listening. If you took any value from this episode, please like or send to someone that could really do with hearing this today. You never know who you might help. By the way, I've tried to record this episode 3 times now. The first time I wrote a script and it was way too scripted. The second time I semi-freestyled it but semi-followed a script. And then this time I was like, wait, let me just freestyle the whole thing. I don't need a script. I'm talking from experience and I'm talking from the heart. So here I am. I also think a little bit of fear was creeping in as well, like fear of not being good enough. So This is the final take. Fear will always creep up. We can't fully get rid of fear. It will always rear its head, but there's ways to deal with it, and there's mindset shifts that you can take towards tackling it. In the next episodes, we're going to dive deeper into rewiring your limiting beliefs, how to manifest, healing, building confidence, and so many more exciting episodes. I can't wait to start this journey with you. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next episode.